First off,
all right. It'll permanently live on our YouTube channel. All right. Hey, well, it's a couple minutes after 7. Let's grab a seat and go ahead and get started here.
All right.
It's so hard to get everybody to stop talking now. We finally got you guys socializing. Should I try to scout sign? Yeah. Oh, some of us know this, that we're in scouts. Oh yeah, you're in scouts? Oh, yeah, that's right, yes. All right, fantastic. Well, I just want to welcome all of our members, and we've got some guests that are fans of Lizzy's here on the computer and here, so exciting to have everybody. I think in the interest of time, let's not go through and do the whole introductions, but I'm going to be here after the meeting. I did want to mention that Hurricane Ian is happening, so let's put all of the folks on the west coast of Florida, all of our sailing friends, family, all those sailing clubs and community sailing centers there. Let's keep them in our thoughts and prayers as we go through this meeting for sure, because that I think that might be a Category 5 or pretty darn close to it when it makes landfall. It's a 4, yeah. Yeah, and that storm surge is going to be insane there. So, and that's like right there in where offshore sailing is too. So, all right. We're going to run through a couple of announcements here that are sort of worthy here, and then we'll get right into our guest speaker after that. Just wanted to make mention that we've made a couple of changes on the board. Beth is now our treasurer. Thank you very much for taking that on. So that left vice president open. So Tyler Wilson has moved into the vice president role there, and that leaves our education officer open. So, but fortunately, we've got some time before next season really gets going and everything to find the right person to fill that. So we're still working that right now. So those folks that were here last, let me see if the slides move. There they are. Last week, remember, or last month at our meeting, we had the Renton Regional Fire Authority or Water Rescue Unit come, and that was a really cool program. Great pictures Simona putting on.
They rescued him.
Yeah, all the scuba gear on there. But my big takeaway from that was that they mentioned that in all of their professional experience, they've never had to rescue someone that was wearing their life jacket. They've never been out on a call. So just a reminder, we all wear our life jackets. It's one of our requirements. But the other thing that's really important is, and we should all do that, is get the leg straps for our life jacket too. Because just 2 summers ago, someone drowned, and they think it's because the life jacket got up over his head when it was failed. So that's a really important thing there. So a couple other things cool happened this summer. I don't have a picture of it, but our Sino sailing group had a picnic, and they brought 50 new people out to go sailing. They sort of ran all that with a little bit of our help. So that was really awesome to get some Chinese families out sailing for the first time. So that was a really cool event. Let's see here, my next picture here. Oh, this was just a couple of weeks ago, sail on our new to us 2 years ago, J80, just happened to be on the 2-year anniversary of when we bought that boat. And Brian and Ingrid made a contribution to our auction for a 3-hour sail. And here they are taking some recent a family that just recently moved here from Afghanistan. So that was really cool to do that and sort of connect that on the 2-year anniversary of buying that boat. So that was really cool there. Another cool thing we did this summer, we had the East African Community Services, kids from teenagers from there. We did some STEM activities. Here we are with the Secchi disc. We built little boats out of clay and floated marbles in them. And We took them all out sailing. So we had, I think, 30 kids out for that event. So that was cool. Everybody that helped out with that. Another cool thing that happened this summer is this young man here, his name's Asheray. He's in the United Nations Earth Science Olympiad, and we helped him out by collecting some water quality samples in Lake Washington. And you wouldn't believe how hard it is to get a sailboat to stay on station and with all that motorboat wake and try to keep it like within like just a couple of meters. And we had to take these samples, like I think it was 10 meters apart from each other. So anyway, we sort of managed to do it. It sort of took an hour to get all these things there. So I haven't really heard what the outcome of his study was there and how many microplastics, was counting the number of microplastics off the beach, the swim beach in Jean Coulon Park there. So, super cool stuff. Let's see here. Oh, I think the pictures of people on the Zoom are covering up the picture of our Catalina 27 that was out cruising this summer. This was in Active Cove on Susha Island. But I just want to remind folks that we've amended our cruising policy just this year and just added, because it was so challenging to prove for the board to prove all of the float plans that were sort of coming in that needed a little bit more work. So we added something. You just need to get 2 people that are already Salish Sea skippers and signed off on the Catalina 27 to peer review your float plan before you send it to the board. There's just so many currents and people didn't understand that there's all these crazy currents up in the San Juans and stuff like that. So we're just adding that to the thing. And then just a reminder, because we're like responding to stuff that people were going to go out cruising like the next week or something like that and needed their float plan approved. And we're sort of going through this. This all makes sense with, you know, when you're planning to come and go and where you're going with the currents up there. So yeah, so that's the story there. I'll keep letting people in here this weekend. Okay. Oh, I think the next slide, Brian, if you want to talk about our beach cleanup that we've got going on. So yeah, come on up here. So at least so the camera can see you there.
Okay. Good evening, everybody, and hello to everybody in Zoom land. I want to talk about an event that we have coming up. It's going to be on October 15th, which is a Saturday, and it is the shoreline cleanup that we do in Jean Coulon Park. This is something that we used to do every year before the pandemic. We stopped during the pandemic, but it's part of the International Coastal Cleanup. And what we're really looking for is some volunteers to come down to the park and help us to clean up the place that is Renton Sailing Centers' home. We'll be cleaning up along the shoreline. We have some great door prizes donated by some of the businesses that we do business with. West Coast Sailing and Fisheries have made some very generous donations. So we'll have some great prizes for the volunteers. One of the categories that we're going to have a prize for is weirdest piece of trash that you find on the shoreline in Jean Coulon Park. And we've had some doozies in past years. So I can't remember. Do you remember any of the ones that we had?
There was a assault rifle water gun that we found one year. Cool. And there was a high heel. Yeah.
Foot not attached, hopefully.
Yeah, foot not
Thankfully
attached,
not.
Fortunately.
Do you want me to talk about Spooky Sale?
Yeah, and then you want to talk about Spooky Sale and the recognition.
So we have a second event at the very end of October. This is something that we run every Halloween. It's called Spooky Sales. We have a special open sailing that day in which people are encouraged to come in appropriate Halloween costumes, and we give away candy to the kids, etc. We'll also be running a spooky sale, keelboat sale that day, particularly open to anybody who is not a keelboat sailor and who would like to go out on one of the keelboats and get a taste for what that's like. And I'll be sending out more details about that and about the cleanup and how you volunteer for that over the coming weeks. Particularly for the cleanup, we want to get as many people to volunteer as possible. The more people we have, the better the job that we can do along the shoreline in Jean Coulon Park. The last thing I want to talk about, because I don't want to take away from our main event tonight, is a new program that the board has developed, a volunteer appreciation program. So we've purchased these Renton Sailing t-shirts. You can see the burgee here on the left part of the front chest. And then on the back, it says Renton Sailing Center, sailing on Lake Washington since 1965. And these are going to be available to people who meet a certain number of volunteer hours over the course of the sailing season. Again, there's going to be more details of that sent out over the course of the next few weeks. And you should also check the Renton Sailing Center newsletter for more details of that. So stay tuned for these two great events coming up over the course of October and this opportunity to win your own highly fashionable Renton Sailing Center t-shirt. All right. Thanks,
Very
John.
nice.
Exciting stuff. I know Brett's here. Where did, oh, do you want to mention, thanks to Brett, our chief dock master, we have been open since beginning of April, and I think almost all the way through October, but we got a couple more dates to fill in October, and I think we've only missed 1 or 2 Saturdays or Sundays.
And it's not just me, there's a bunch of dock masters in there too, that, actually get out there and do it with.
Brett wrangles us.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So, we've still got 2 Saturdays and 2 Sundays in October that are open, and it's 8th, 9th, 23rd, and 29th. But if you look on our calendar, you can see the glaring white spot where there's no name. And if you can hop in there, because we're still having great wind, and it's not freezing yet. It's not even wet. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you, Brett, for all you're doing there and all the dock masters. That's a huge lift to our organization here. Don couldn't make it. He couldn't make it on Zoom, so I got a couple of announcements. We are tentatively looking at November 5th as sort of a cleanup day, make sure everything's secure for the winter, that we've got the canvas on not all, but most of the boats that are down there that aren't going to be used over the winter time. I know Dean's going to take some lead on making sure that Hunter 170 gets pulled off the mooring ball. We're going to keep an eye on the weather and hopefully do that sort of right before the first scale of October rolls through. So, because I don't know if you remember, a couple of years ago, it capsized on its mooring ball there, so we don't want that to happen. So that's sort of a pain in the butt there. Let's see here. At Jinkulan Park, they are going to be doing some construction. They're going to be replacing part of that bulkhead that's sort of right behind our dock. That's a very small project, but the big project is they are replacing the bridge that's just north of us along the walkway there. So the impact to us is the northernmost dozen or so parking spots are going to be closed. That roundabout right where our sailing center is going to be closed, but you can still access our dock by parking in the park there and then just coming down the walkway along the water, and we're going to still be provided access to the dock there. They're going to be doing some plumbing upgrades at the restrooms there, so if you're coming down, you need to use the bathroom, plan to use the bathroom near the Ivers. That one will still be open. So it won't have a lot of impact on us because they're starting middle of October, but this is going to go all the way through the winter and probably into the spring. There is going to be a construction barge moored right near where that bridge is being replaced there. That'll limit some navigation, but we'll still be able to get in and out of our dock and get boats off the mooring balls there too. We'll just have to get around that area, and we'll know a little bit more details on that too. Did I miss anything, Beth? You were on that call. Cool. I think that's sort of the impact to us. So so everybody knows that that's happening there. Let's see here. Our new Zests are running awesome and everything. We have sort of reiterated the rigging and unrigging instructions. They are now on rentonsailing.org and the fleet section of the website there. And they're also printed and there's a booklet in the East Dock box. So please follow those rigging and unrigging instructions, which also include learning how to tie a square lashing. So if you don't know how to tie a square lashing, look it up on the internet or look at the instructions, or I can help you with tying a square lashing. So that'll be a new thing for us to do that. So are there any other announcements for the good of the order that I missed in my list here? All right. Well, with that, it looks like let me let a couple more people in here. And okay, I think everybody's in on the Zoom now, and I'm going to switch over to your presentation. I'll get you introduced here. Let's see, here come more people. Oh, there it is. Here we go, Clipper presentation. How do I make this big now? Yeah. Here, come hit the right button. While I introduce you there. I'm not used to slides yet, so.
I'm a millennial, I'm not paying for Microsoft.
Yeah. Yeah, I am tied to that at work. Good, we got that off and running here. So, hey, it is my pleasure to introduce Lizzy Grimm. I met Lizzy, I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago. You're working at Fisheries Supply and in the rigging department back there. And I don't know if you remember this, but you helped me pick out some winches for our Ranger 24.
Yes.
Okay, and you had a Clipper jacket on. And I was like, oh, I'm intrigued. So I was chatted with Lizzy about her plans to race in the Clipper Around the World race, and which you're going to hear all about. But I think before that, the Clipper was last in Seattle maybe like 5 years ago or something like that.
They started coming in 2016.
It was in 2016,
Yeah, 2016 was the first year.
Yeah, and so I was intrigued. I'd just gotten off Kirsten's Hunter 45, which is all very nice and plush. You even push a button to flush the toilet on that boat. And we just got back from San Juan. And on my way back into town, I went and visited the Clipper boats. And that you could take a tour of the boat while it was in the harbor. It's actually really cool to do. And so I got on the boat, because I'm intrigued. It's like, this race, any of us can sign up for it and just pay the fee and get the training, and we're sailing around the world. Well, I get on the boat, we get the whole tour, and I go down below and I'm like, there's hot bunks, the off watch is sleeping in the bunk, and then they come on watch and you go down and eat and do all your stuff, fix stuff, and then you're in that same bunk. I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is for me. And then it smells like poo down there, and it smells like diesel in there, and I'm like, I don't know if this is for me, but I think I was so intrigued. It was really cool. And then I went across the street to a hotel, and they had this little theater, and they showed this video of going across the Pacific in hurricane force winds. I was like, no way, I'm never gonna do this. So Lizzy's a great advocate for women's sailing. I think part of you doing the Clipper was awareness of mental health issues too. So hopefully you'll talk about that. Board member for Pink Boat Regatta. Some of us have participated in the Pink Boat Regatta and just had a ton of fun doing a great thing for women's health. Duck Dodge shenanigans, sailmaker, Ballard Sails. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Please welcome Lizzy Grimm.
Thank you for that introduction. Yep, I'm Lizzy. For those of you that don't know me, I sail mostly out of Seattle. My mom and I own a little Catalina 27 named Happy Place. So yes, I do shenanigate on that for Duck Dodge. And then for racing, I like racing. So I go on a bunch of different boats. But yeah, this fall we'll be doing a lot of that. To start with, so yeah, my mother is she's listening in. So my mom literally started me sailing. I started when I was in college because she started sailing, started having entirely too much fun. Well, she restarted sailing, started having entirely too much fun with it. So I started tagging along with her. Then she took me to this Duck Dodge thing, and I realized, well, wait a second, you can sail on a weeknight in the summer in costumes, and there's a party until 10. Okay, I like the sailing thing a lot. And so did that a little bit, and then started asking questions about, well, what else is there to do with racing? And then at this point, my plan is just keep answering that for the rest of my life. Sailing has also been a very big part of my mental health journey. I am a survivor of a suicide attempt. We're coming up on, oh gosh, how many years now? Almost 10 years of still being here. So that is something I'm very proud of. But I have been using sailing to speak out about mental health. For me, sailing is one of the ways that I've found my happy. It's part of my mom and I have named our boat Happy Place. And so I want to encourage others to find whatever their thing is that you can use to hang on for a little bit longer, whether that's sailing, whether that's art, whether that's reading, whatever, but just find that thing that, like, even if you aren't happy, like, find something that can convince you to make it one more day and then another. So, and then as John said, right now I work at Ballard Sales. It is, I'll be honest, I landed my dream job. It's really fun there. I get to fix sales. I'm going to be starting to work on making new sales. So shameless plug, but if your sales or your boat need love, Ballard will take care of you.
All of our sales go to Ballard. So.
Yes, they do. And then we'll start talking about Clipper. Like John said, they started coming to Seattle in 2016. Mom's fault again. She invited me to a talk at Corinthian Yacht Club where they had one of the Clipper boats. We got to tour it, and the minute I stepped on board the boat, it was weird. There was the shiver, and it was just, okay, so there's going to be something big here. Spoiler alert, I did do the race. So thanks again, Mom. So I've got a couple links here. The first one is just some general info about the Clipper race. I won't read the whole thing off because nobody likes anyone reading a PowerPoint or a website. I won't do it to you, but
Thank
yeah, big pet peeve of mine. But it is, as John says, a pretty crazy race. I'm going to go down to the stats about the boats next, but it's a race designed so that an average amateur person can do the race. About 40% of the people that sign up to do the Clipper race have never sailed before at all. They have a training that takes you from no sailing experience to ready to cross an ocean in 4 weeks. We'll go into that. But you get people from all different walks of life. You'll get people my age and younger. The youngest person on our boat was 18 years old, and he was this tall. So he was great when it was time to flake sails. You get people, I think the most seasoned crew member we had was in their 70s. So you had a good mix of people. We did find that it was skewed pretty heavily towards people in their 40s and 50s, retirees. And yeah, it made for a good mix. But you also will get like housewives that are next to a CEO, that are next to a sailmaker, next to someone that works in finance. It's just there's all different kinds of people, which makes it a little bit different than your regular racing experience. It's a race that you can either sign up to circumnavigate, going all the way around the world, London and back, or if you are like me and cannot afford the $100,000 to do the whole around the world, you can do a couple of legs. So I chose to do like 7 and 8. When I signed up, they hadn't fully announced all of the ports, but I knew that Seattle was going to be it. It had to. So I did legs that we'll talk about in a couple of minutes. But there are multiple ocean crossings on the Clipper race. I crossed the Atlantic, and then it goes to the Panama Canal, which is very exciting. But it's 11 equally matched, supposedly, 70-foot sailboats. It's a one design race. And yeah, and you'll get a whole mix of people, from people that stay on for the whole thing, and then you also get people coming and going each leg. So if there's someone you don't like on your boat, they might not be their next leg, which makes things a little easier. As John said, the fleet is they're not luxury boats whatsoever. They are boats that are they're overbuilt because, again, they're sailed by amateurs. So a Volvo 70 is made for a professional sailor. A Clipper 70 is made for someone that's remembering that we winches clockwise, not counterclockwise, and things like that. So very, very dense fiberglass boats. The rigging is really fat. The sheets are really fat. I have never felt heavier rope in my life. Just coiling the Yankee sheets it's heavy. So this is one of the Clipper 70s under sail. This was the Visit Seattle boat from the last race. I think mine was prettier this year. But as far as the boats, let me get to the stats. So here's the fun numbers. And again, this link, I'm sure John will send out to you later so you can really get into it. But overall, there's 75 feet because they do have a big long bowsprit on the end of it. That was one of my favorite places to hang out. They are 19 feet wide, so big, wide boats that made the Panama Canal very fun. And then the mast is 95 feet tall. So if you are going to the top of that rig, you have a lot of time to experience what 95 feet looks like. And yes, Mom, I did do that. Okay, so next I have just a quick video in here about the race, just to kind of see the boats in motion. And then I'll talk at you even more. And then this is a lot of people from the last edition of the race, so the 17-18, but it looks similar.
Yeah.
And those of you that follow the race, you might notice the legs have changed a little bit. We didn't go to Rio on this last one, but I'll go over that just a little bit as well.
You said that was your favorite place?
Sometimes.
That's not often, not when it's like that. Thanks for a good video. But other than that.
There's a theme here. Expeditions with us. So that is Clipper's wonderfully polished video. But you can see, I wanted to show you that one because you can really see some of the sea conditions that we have. And yeah, it gets a little lively there. Let's go. All right, so since coming home, I've had a lot of people ask me many questions, so I'll try to get some of those right up front. So you've got those answered, and then we can continue on. But the ones I've typically gotten are, why the heck did you sign up to do this? The first one was, admittedly, the recruitment director and I started talking about the finer points of whiskey at the talk, and I decided it might be a good idea to do the race. But it was an opportunity to get the training to cross an ocean and then continue on with crossing an ocean as part of a race. I am privileged and lucky to have a lot of opportunity to race around here in the Seattle area, but nothing like Clipper yet. So that was one. I was really looking for an adventure, and clearly that happened. I did hear that the stopovers are quite fun. I got to experience that in Seattle. I kind of became the unofficial Seattle mascot, especially for the 17-18 stopover. So getting to experience that, had me excited to go visit other cities with Clipper and experience visiting those places in a way that Clipper really does pretty special things for those stopovers, which I'll get into. And like most things I end up saying later, it seemed like a good idea at the time. And most of the time it was. Okay. Next question. Where do we sleep and how do we sleep? John touched on this a little bit. This is what my bunk looked like as I was kind of getting my stuff together for Bermuda. It's not always that messy. Mom, be quiet. But it's a pretty cozy area. You can kind of see over here, we have what we call cave lockers. There are 3 per bunk. Each person gets 1.5. And that's what you put your things that you're going to be using during the race on. We also have long-term storage for like your big duffel bags. Don't you dare bring a hard-sided suitcase. Squishy duffel bags are your friend. So things that we don't need for that leg or that we need for stopovers get stowed away, they get tied up. Everything else, you need to live your life out of a series of dry bags, cave lockers, whatnot. Because you do want to be very organized on the boats. There are anywhere from 15 to 22 people on the boat per leg. So if you're messy about your stuff, you're not going to know where it is. People are going to move it. Sometimes people passive aggressively hide it if they're annoyed at seeing your things out. So you want to be organized. When I am not in my bunk, there is someone else sleeping in my bunk. Usually it's my actual bunkmate, but sometimes when there were things like seasickness or someone was on the cooking duty, we had to get creative with flexing bunk space. And then we did, how do I sleep? Very, very well. It's amazing how quickly one can sleep when you are just dead exhausted, tired, no matter what the boat is doing. My boat did a watch system where it was 4 hours on, 4 off at night, and then 6 hours on, 6 hours off during the day. There were a couple of benefits to this. One was you got at least 1 long sleep in theory every day. The other reason we did the 4s at night and 6 during the day was then you didn't have the same shift every day. So if you were on sunrise watch one day, you were not on it the next day. It kept things a little bit more interesting. And then at watch changeover during midday, when it wasn't too hot, we would do a meeting at that time. When it was really hot out during the, especially on the way down to Panama and up from Panama, we would do the meeting in the evening when it was a little more bearable. But yeah, I promise my bunk was not always that messy. What's the food like? So has anyone here done provisioning for a cruise? Okay, a few. Have any of you done it for 20 people for a month? So
But I've done it for 30 days.
there you go. So with Clipper, we have to feed everybody at the same time. Everyone takes turns doing everything. That's another thing that's really unique about the Clipper race. There is not one person stuck on galley duty the entire race. Everybody pays the same thing to do the race. Everyone does their, everyone does their turn. So with that, they call it mother duty, which I don't love because I know plenty of dads that can cook as well. But every day, 2 people are on the mother shift. The other perk of doing the mother shift is at the end of that, you get to sleep through the entire night. You don't get woken up to come on watch at nighttime. But you're cooking for everybody. So there aren't really any special requests. We did have one vegetarian on our boat for the last leg. And her, we did accommodate because at that point, like eating meat would actually make her sick because she'd been vegetarian for quite a long time. But you eat what's given to you. And if you don't like what's given to you, you're either going to go hungry or hope that there's good things in the snack cabinet. But there's some people that are really great in the galley, and there's some people when it's their turn in the galley, you're rummaging around for your spices and your sauces and whatnot to see what you can jazz up with it. On the race, especially on some of those days when it's really lively, you're burning over 4,000 calories or over 5,000 calories in a day. Even just stabilizing yourself in your bunk while you're sleeping, you're burning calories. So quite often I would go off watch after breakfast, having just eaten breakfast, wake up on watch, it's lunchtime, I'm starving again, partly because didn't always eat as much for breakfast, and then just, again, stabilizing in the bunk. So it's just constant eating. If you're familiar with Lord of the Rings, hobbits have breakfast, second breakfast, 11sies, and so on and so forth. That's basically a Clipper sailor as well. By like 11 in the morning, someone's asking if the kettle's going on, because other thing with Clipper race, over half of them are British. And Lord help you if you make skipper's tea wrong. I didn't ever do that. Okay, what was it like going through the Panama Canal? Like the Ballard Locks, but a lot bigger. There were also supposedly more gators. There is the big lake between the Pacific side and the Atlantic side. I had my eyes peeled for gators, did not see any. I was a little bit upset about that because my boat overall didn't really see much wildlife on the race. I did, however, get stung by a wasp in the Panama Canal, but thankfully found out not allergic. We'll go more over the Panama Canal because it was really freaking cool.
Ask Julie later about getting stung by wasps in the Santa Lucia.
Oh, well, you're still here, so I know it has a good ending, but yeah, not fun. What was the longest we were at sea? So leg 7, but started the leg from Seattle to Panama. It was 30 days from Seattle to Panama, and they were long. The refueling stop in Costa Rica, I think, was good for all of us. I'm very grateful everyone got back on the boat in Costa Rica because it was a very, very long leg. Sometimes the leg down can be a bit of a sleigh ride. Sometimes there can be wind holes. And when I say wind holes, I mean, I don't think I have enough fingers and toes to count all the wind holes that we found ourselves in. And when they're measured in hundreds of miles, it's less than fun. So this is us. I did bring my friend's sock monkey, George. If any of you follow the Race to Alaska, George is a Race to Alaska mainstay. But he joined me. He does cheat at cards, so I had to keep him pretty close to me. But this is us playing cards, trying to fend off sea madness. And then what was my favorite stopover? Without question, that was Derry, Northern Ireland. We'll go over that one in a bit as well. But Derry was just incredible. And then did everyone get along? No. When you put almost 20 people on a boat and you put that boat in the middle of the sea, and then you put people on that boat for 30 days that are from all different walks of life, we're going to have some disagreements. So it did make for some interesting crew dynamics at times. I mean, again, with their youngest crew member being 18 and our oldest crew member was somewhere in their 60s and people all the way in between. You throw a loud redhead Yankee in there, and yeah, sometimes it got a little interesting, but we mostly also talked to each other, and I did get some really great friends out of the race too. And then what was the wind and weather like? We had a lot of wind and we had no wind. I chose this picture. I don't know if you can see, but there are, I'll point for the people on Zoom. You can see these 2 little brown things. So on the Clipper boat, as many of you do on your own boats, nothing goes in the head that you have not eaten. So these brown bags are what we put our, shall we say, entrance tickets into. When we're past a certain point, past land, we're legally able to throw those overboard, and we do because, again, 20 people, 2 heads, there's math that can be done there. Those stayed next to our boat for over an hour, and at one point they were moving faster than our boat. Because they were getting more windage than we were. So that was a moment of very much no wind. And then crossing the North Atlantic, we had over 65 knots of wind. So John, you might not have liked that part of it.
That is hurricane force.
Not quite.
65, right?
I don't think it, I don't know.
I think it is. I think
It might be lower grade hurricane.
Someone look it up on the
Yeah.
scale.
Somebody's got it.
We didn't know it was 65 knots until we got into Derry because our boat's electrical or our instruments gave up the ghost about 3 days outside of New York. So we knew it was forecast to happen and we were forecast for 30 to 40 knots. But then when we got into Derry, we were chatting with other boats and they said, ones that were around us said that they were clocking over 60. So we're like, okay, if the boats next to us, in front of us, and behind us all had 60 knots, we probably did too. So that made it a little lively. Unfortunately, waves never show up in pictures quite the same as they were in real life. So
63
It looked a lot
knots is
bigger.
hurricane force. You sailed in
Okay.
hurricane force.
all right, sorry, Mom, I've been in a hurricane. Okay, so training. The Clipper race, like I mentioned, is designed to take you from no sailing experience at all to being able to, for some insane reason, cross an ocean on a sailboat. So they do 4 weeks of training starting at the basics. So it's kind of like your ASA 101, but really amped up. And then by the end of it, you're doing practice race starts. You're doing the full-on overnight watch system. You're doing racing head sail changes. You're doing the galley duty. You're doing everything. So the training in my case, I went to Gosport in the UK. So had never been to England before. I've gone now 4 times, I think, as part of the race. So that part's pretty cool. This was raising the ensign. So the race was founded by a gentleman named Sir Robin Knox Johnson. He was a winner of the Golden Globe race many, many years ago. He wanted to found a race that average people could do. He is very old school British sailor. So every day we raised the ensign at sunrise. At every evening we properly lowered this ensign. He also lives right by the boats. So if he sees you not taking good care of his babies, you leave a fender out, you don't have the ensign up, you're going to hear about him. So they thought it was hilarious to have the American raise the ensign on the first day of training. And these are checking all of our life vests. So Clipper is very, very big about safety. Unfortunately, they have had a couple of fatalities during the race, and they have really worked hard to make changes from those to make sure that people stay safe. So they were really big about clipping on. Our life jackets they're no longer this model. They're now the Spinlock Vito life jackets, which I love because they're so comfortable. They do have that integrated crotch strap to keep it from going up and over you. But at the beginning of every training and then at every stopover, we service our life jackets. So we blow them up, leave them inflated overnight to make sure that they're not leaking. You check your cartridges, check whistles, make sure everything is where it should be, because in the middle of the ocean, you want to make sure that you know your life jacket is as it should be. And then this is a Clipper 68. So the new version of the boats are the 70s. The last version was the 68s. It was really interesting to do training on the second edition of the boats for the first 2 weeks, and then be on the more recent ones for weeks 3 and 4, because you can see some major changes that they made. Right in here is what's called the snake pit. This is where a lot of the halyards and whatnot are run back to. On the 70s, the current boats, everything is led back to the cockpit. On these, they were in a separate area. So as you can imagine, can be a tripping hazard, can be difficult to work in, but little differences there. This was flaking, or this was doing a racing head sail change. No, what are we doing here? This is flaking a sail. So the boats, everything is bigger and heavier than I've ever dealt with before. So to finish flaking this sail, I had to, again, clip on Mom, I promise, step onto the bow pulpit so that I could reach the upper hanks to change the sail. That's what we're doing, we're changing it. And then this is a man overboard drill. Because the boats are so big, their freeboard is tall enough that the average person is not going to be able to climb up onto the boat unassisted. So there's a couple of things that we do for our man overboards. One is you have a rescue swimmer that gets attached to a halyard and lowered down to the casualty. In this case, our casualty here in orange is a very heavy weighted man overboard dummy. We name him Bob, but he's he's not everyone's favorite crew member. He kind of just hangs around. He's lazy. He keeps falling off the boat. But we lower someone on a halyard down to pick up the casualty. We then connect the casualty to a second halyard, bring them both up together. We also have different things like the scramble net here. If for some reason the person that's overboard is still able to fully use their arms, they can like hook onto that and wait to get pulled up. We drill incessantly on man overboard during the trainings because we want to know that if something does happen in the middle of the race, that you're still fresh on it. And then at every stopover, we also did a man overboard drill before going out to sea. And here is deep clean. So John mentioned when he saw the boats in Seattle that they had a bit of an odor to them. This is true. Ours thankfully didn't smell like poo. We kept it pretty clean, but there are some other boats that were not as tidy. But at every stopover, you pull up every single floorboard, you pressure wash everything, you clean everything, the head, the galley get completely deep cleaned, and then you get to trash it again on the next race. This was race office, and then this was going up the top of the rig. Wasn't going to resist the chance to do that. So level 1 was the kind of like basics sailing training. Level 2 is what I call the proving grounds. It's level 1, you're back at port every night, not always the same port. We did get to go to Cowes and a couple of other places in the UK. But for level 2, you go out for parts of 4 to 5 days. So you were on the boat the entire time, you're doing the watch system. This is really to shake out and see, okay, who can really do this for a period of time. Spoiler alert, there were some people that got very, very sick. I got lucky, I did not. But this is the beginning of the race. We're out, or not race, beginning of the training. We're out on the foredeck going over a safety thing. My level 2, we also got to fly the spinnaker. You don't always get to do that until level 3, but in this case, the wind was just right and our skipper loved us enough that we got to fly the spinnaker. But in flying the spinnaker, that means you get to pack a spinnaker. So you'll see that in a minute. This was a night that we anchored out. We do practice anchoring just in case we need to do it. There's always the threat that we might have to anchor in the lake in Panama. So they have us practice that, as well as some ports, if we get there before they're ready for us, we have to anchor out and wait to come in. Thankfully, my boat never had to do that, but there was always a possibility. It did get a little lively, so I'm a little waterlogged here. Dolphins, there we go. Dolphins are always something that skippers despise because they distract the crew. We saw many dolphins during the course of training and during the race. There is an acronym AFD that some skippers use. It stands for another, insert your favorite F word here, dolphin. Our skipper put that in the logbook a couple of times, which was quite funny. A moment of laziness on board. And then this is packing one of the sails. So again, they're bigger and heavier than anything I've ever dealt with. They're still bigger and heavier than 99% of the sails I deal with at Ballard. So to flake these sails, you've got to line up 4 to 5 people along the guard wires, sit down, and then people are handing you the sail as you're flaking it with 5 people. It's a fun team building exercise. It's also exhausting because just the weight of the sail on your legs is quite great. And then this is the Castle Tavern in Gosport, a very, very important establishment, especially for the end of training weeks. And then level 3. So I did my levels 1 and 2 back to back. At the end of that, I had a new definition for, oh my God, I'm tired. My level 3, I came back and did the following spring. And level 3 is when you really do drill on spinnakers. So remember where I mentioned having to pack a spinnaker, you're just going to see a pretty fun photo of that. We do an advanced safety training on level 3. Level 2, I forgot to mention, you also do an in the pool safety training. So you learn how to get into a lifeboat. I learned I never want to get into a lifeboat. They're not cute and cozy like I thought they were. They're just little inflatable balls of please no. So we did a safety training about sea survival. This is our skipper going over the basics of spinnakers, because again, some people that are doing the level 3 training have never flown a spinnaker ever. I can't fathom doing clipper having never sailed before, because even as a sailor, I was in over my head at points. But yeah, so here he is going over spinnaker flying. This is us getting ready to head out, and this is on the 70s. So this is on the current version of the boats. This is us with our spinnaker up. Now, it might be kind of hard to see, but you'll notice these little lines of tape through the spinnaker. The sails get very, very beat up during the course of the race. The sails that survive the race then become training sails and get more beat up. But during the race, if you rip your sail, you fix it. So there's some foreshadowing there. This is the joy of packing a spinnaker. So on the clipper boats, the smallest spinnaker is the same sail area as a tennis court. So it looks big and beautiful when it's up. It looks huge and overwhelming when it comes below deck on the boat. On the clipper, we always letterbox drop. So we drop the sail through the between the boom and the bottom of the mainsail. It keeps it smaller, still can explode out on you. And then the sail has to get packed when it comes down below. So as you can imagine, big, big, long spinnakers. So you've got to take it into 3 parts, wrap them all into the middle, and then put the whole octopus back into a sail bag. It takes up the entirety of the down below of the boat to do so. It's really fun when someone's trying to cook dinner at the same time. And then crew allocation. For those of you that are familiar with Harry Potter, this is like getting sorted into your Hogwarts house. So it was a very, very exciting day. The night before, it leaked that there would be a Seattle boat. And so at that point, I knew it was really game on, because as my mind tends to do, it ran away with me, and I realized, well, if there's a Seattle boat, then there must be a Seattle stopover. And surely I must be on it because I'm Lizzie from Seattle. And that is what happened. There was a point during the presentation, they announced my name for Seattle, and I had my little Elle Woods moment because I did yell quite loudly. And then at crew allocation, you get to meet your other crewmates. I was very lucky to find out that some of them were friends that I already had made during the race. You get to meet your skipper and your first mate. And then you do breakouts where you start to talk about what kind of culture you want to have on your boat, what your goals are. Because the other thing with the Clipper is it is a race. However, there are some skippers that want it to really be a hardcore aggressive race. And there are some skippers that realize their crew wants an adventure. They're not as focused on a race. So you get a whole mix. This was the hall. Clipper does a whole bunch of media stuff, so they do things very polished. They had this in this big hall at Portsmouth University, all the big posters and branding out, but it was a pretty cool moment. And then this was one of the breakout sessions. All right, and then my slide for 4th week of training didn't save, but the 4th week of training is the true dress rehearsal. So that's when you're doing practice race starts, you're doing your watch system, you do everything as you would when the race is actually going on. So you're doing tactics. In my case, we crossed the English Channel over to France, didn't get to step foot in France, but got to get some photos tagged in France, so that was cool. But like you're talking about the tactics as far as racing, as far as like using your navigation software to get around. So very, very interesting. And you can tell which skippers during that time, and it's with your boat, your skipper. So you can tell just from then which skippers are really taking the race seriously versus which ones are a little more lackadaisical about it. And then prep week. So prep week is when you really start to customize the boats, and you're also getting ready for the first few legs of the race. So here, remember I talked about how you provision for a lot of people. Here we are breaking out different things into different days and months worth of food. So in order to keep things organized on the boat, what my boat did was we had these big dry bags that were called our day bags, and each bag had that day's food in it. So we would get these big bulk packages and then portion everything out into day bags of food. It's a huge undertaking. As you can see here, these portions are pretty big. We also take the labels off of all the cans so that they don't get wet, soggy, and that also means we have to label all of the cans. So if you've written fruit cocktail on 50 different cans, you're going to lose your mind a little bit. So at points we got creative with labeling.
Is there refrigeration?
Good question. Kind of. There's not a whole lot. We do carry the Dometic freezer on our boat that's like, I don't know, like maybe 3 feet
It's not
long by
much
like
for-
1.5. So in our case, we used it only as a freezer, and we would pre-freeze things like meats that we would use for meals, but a lot of it's canned dry good foods. So I still have not been able to eat canned tuna since coming home, because that was a huge staple on the boat. Since, I mean, it's easy to keep protein, but when every other meal is tuna, I think I've had my quota on tuna for a while. Remember I said we're sailing with a lot of British people. This was one of 4 bags of tea that came on the boat for the first couple months of the race. We were all out of Tetley by the time I got on the boat. We were on to Yorkshire. And then other part of prep week. So you were completely getting the boat ready for the upcoming race. You're stripping it of everything that was on it for training. So all of the sails that had been used on the last race and then lived to become training sails, they all got pulled off the boats and put in a big giant pile to, they didn't say they were getting donated. I'm hoping that they didn't go off to a farm somewhere, but we took them all off the boat and then got beautiful new sails that we got to bend on. And again, the big heavy sails, brand new mainsail, very stiff and heavy to put on the boat. Here we marked every single spinnaker and we labeled every panel with a letter and a number so that way when the spinnaker's up and flying and you inevitably see that there's a hole in it, you can tell your sail repair person, hey, there's a hole in 8A, instead of having to say, yeah, it's like 4 panels up and like 3 over by the red thing. Much easier to find when the sail comes down. Still hard sometimes. But this is me sitting in the middle of one of our spinnakers just so you can see an idea of just the size of them. They're enormous. The spinnaker bags do make very comfy nests if you're off watch. And then, so this is our beautiful new mainsail up on the boat. Notice how beautiful the logos look when you see my photos from legs 7 and 8 that were done this year. And then for scale, that was my skipper, and there's way more mast above him. And then the world paused. So I was supposed to start the race in April of 2020, but we all know what 2020 held. So initially the race said that they were going to pause for 6 months. Obviously things were paused for much more than 6 months. So they kept pausing it 6 months at a time. There were points doing that I became pretty disillusioned. It was like, it's never going to happen. I'm going to lose everything I've spent on it. And I had a lot of great supporters that had contributed as well. But thankfully, it did finally end up happening towards November, December. They started talking about, okay, it's really going to happen. In February, the boats, backtrack. When the world paused, the fleet was in the Philippines as the race was already underway. The boats had to get left there for what became 2 years. One of the skippers stayed on to watch the boats, check generators, keep systems running. But he can only do so much. And so in February, the skippers and first mates came back, started getting the boats ready. And then a crew came on that were going to do leg 6 from the Philippines to Seattle. They finished getting the boats ready and then they cast off and started coming here. I was at the Sloop Tavern when they broadcast the live ceremony of the boats all leaving. I might have cried a little bit. But then it became race your time to watch my boat finally make it to Seattle after all that time. So this very blurry photo is the first Clipper boat coming into Seattle after that time. Because life likes to punish people sometimes, this was the longest Pacific crossing that the Clipper race ever had. So from the Philippines to Seattle, it was 35 days for some of them. So this was WTC Logistics coming in early in the morning on a Sunday. My mom and I had our happy little boat at Bell Harbor Marina so that way we could be there when the fleet came in. We could be Renegade Hospitality Suite, which we did that week. But it was amazing watching a Clipper boat finally be in Seattle again. Here's our happy little boat in front of a very big, very happier of a different kind boat at Bell Harbor. And then here we have the fleet starting to come in. If I can click a button properly. Oh, there we go. Come on. So like I said, we were Renegade Hospitality Suite. So for the morning boats that came in, we were serving them mimosas. These again were people that have not touched land since the Philippines. So they were very happy to have those. They were walking a little wiggly, but I don't blame them. And then this was the moment I've been waiting for literally over 2 years, the Seattle boat finally coming into port. They all looked a little tired, but it was just amazing to see the Seattle boat finally come to her home port. And I definitely cried then. Here's the fleet all together at Bell Harbor. And then it was a very quick turnaround. So because it was the longest crossing ever, it meant the stopover got shortened a lot. They were actually 5 days after the arrival window was supposed to happen. So within that time period, there was a lot of work that needed to get done. There were some sails that had to get repaired. And I'll let you guess where they came to in Seattle. And then they had to prepare to feed people. They had to go from one really long leg of feeding people to the second longest leg of feeding people. So they had to do complete restocks. Costco was a wonderful thing, but had to completely restock, get food broken out to those day bags again, maybe try to get some rest all in the course of 5 days. So they were really excited to have people that were joining for leg 7 that weren't exhausted yet, that had new energy. But it was a very short turnaround. So here we have, this is part of the provisioning. I was very excited to see macaroni and cheese. I started to become less excited when we had it every 8th day for lunch. But
With tuna.
no, we never did tuna in the mac and cheese.
Oh, that's really good.
So the sail off that Clipper uses is Ballard sails. So I had sworn up and down that I wasn't going to go into the loft while Clipper was there because I was going to be off, but I'm a glutton for punishment. So went to the loft to hang out. We have someone from the Bermuda boat here, and then this is James, who became a very good buddy in Bermuda when I fixed his spinnaker. And then this is a big view of the upstairs of Ballard sails. That's 3 different Clipper sails all getting worked on at the same time, because again, we had to just crank them out and get them ready. This is my skipper and my first mate going over the plan to get down to Panama. So we went over the charts. Here they're going over the south end of Mexico and Central America and Panama. And then this one, so because it's a very short turnaround, our maintenance crew are some of the unsung heroes of the race. This was, I think, like 7:30 at night on Friday. We were leaving on Saturday, but they were fixing something below. So I came by to do something on the boat, saw that they were still working, and showed them some Seattle hospitality. Because who doesn't love a vitamin R? All right, so then it was time to go, finally. Oh my goodness. So here we have my dog sending me off. I don't think he realized I was going to be gone for that long, but this was everything I packed for 3 months. And it turns out I actually overpacked. A lot of people had like just a backpack and 1 bag and sleeping bag, but it was my whole life in bags for 3 months. And then this is me with George getting ready to leave Seattle. This is the Seattle boat. They had us at the end of the dock so that we were all pretty and on display. And then here is my mom and some girlfriends on our little boat. They went out to send me off, but I love the juxtaposition of my happy little boat and then my big girl. And then here is the parade of sail leaving Seattle. So Clipper does like to do a lot of dog and pony show. So at every stopover, we do a parade of sail. And it was surreal to realize that I was going to be seeing Seattle for the last time for 3 months.
You mentioned the day. What day of the?
Oh, that was April 30th.
Start?
Yep, April 30th. Then here's us leaving more. And then we were off. So we're starting to motor out to Nia Bay. At the same time, there was was it Protection Island? No, Smith Island. There was a Seattle Yacht Club race that same day. And so as we were leaving, we got to see some of the TP-52s and Zvi sailing by us. So I caught a picture of them as we were leaving. And then this was the first sunset at sea. So you'll see through the photos, we were privileged to have so many beautiful sunsets and sunrises. I am biased. I think they look better at sea, but it was pretty cool to get a really beautiful one the first day. Okay, so we're on to the racing part. So some big highlights for me were, like it says on here, finally making the left turn. I'd done the right turn. I'd come from Oregon up and turned right into Nia Bay from other racing, but to finally be going left the really long way was surreal. Like I mentioned earlier, Mexico is a very, very, very long country. I continued to be amazed. I'd come back on watch rather, and be like, are we out of Mexico yet? Like, no, Lizzie, still 3 more days. It was incredible. I have a very dear friend that packed us a wonderful halfway bag. Opening that at the halfway mark was really cool. She did a mix of treats, some silly things, but very fun for morale. Boobies. They are very funny, goofy birds. They kept us very entertained for about 2 weeks when they took up residence on various ones took up residence on our boat. Plus, it's fun to say. It got very, very hot. I have a new definition for just swampy. Like below deck, things were dripping just from the condensation because, again, these are not luxury cruisers. There is no air conditioner. You get scolded if you leave the freezer open for too long, even if you're ducking your head down. I swear I'm looking for something. So it's hot. We have USB fans, but they can only do so much. So Everybody that did like 7 got to see what I looked like in my underwear because everybody below deck pretty much was just like, you know what, it's survival mode. We did get a wonderful, wonderful rain shower. So just like that video we saw, the crew taking showers, we got one day where it rained for a solid 30 minutes. It was warm. My hair got clean. It was wonderful. I can now say I've motored over 1,000 nautical miles because again, that the canal transit time that we have to make, Clipper does a series of 5 virtual gates that you have to sail through, or rather sail or motor through, in order to make sure that you're on the rum line so that you can get as quickly to Panama as possible. They ended us at the 3rd gate, which meant we had a long way to keep going. And then, like I mentioned, the Costa Rica stop to get showers and beers, and they'll fuel the boat up. And then Panama.
There's no shower on that boat.
No.
Not even a hose. So.
No, yeah, so on the boat, there is not really a shower. What we'll do is we do have water makers, and thankfully ours did work. You can do like a freshwater, basically bird bath and wet wipes.
With the bucket.
Yep, and we'll do bucket, and that's it. So that first shower in port is magical. So where there's highs, there are lows. So I touched on sail repair a little bit. So the very first night out, we had a halyard snap and we shrimped our kite. Pulling in a kite like that full of water at 2 a.m. is not my favorite thing in the world, especially when I have to wake up and do it again the next night with the other kite. So we shrimped 2 kites in a row. It got pretty rough. Like I touched on earlier, people don't always get along when there's a lot of people and not a lot of boat. And then to get our land to Panama, we did have one boat that was starting to have engine trouble. And so since we were the closest boat, we were instructed to be the stand-on vessel to them. And so we buddy boated with them. So that way, if they did get into bigger trouble, we were able to tow them. Thankfully, they were able to limp along, but it did mean that we got 1 day less of Panama time, which is fine. All right. So photos from Leg 7. This was the beginning. It was just outside of Nia Bay. It was still pretty rowdy at that point. We did have quite a bit of churn the first couple of days. So there were some people that the Green Monster hung out with. Again, thankfully, I got lucky. This was the Le Mans start. So for almost all of the races, they don't actually start us out right outside of the port. They want us to go out and motor to more favorable conditions. So they don't want to put a committee boat off of Nia Bay. Instead, they had us do a Le Mans start where we motor, we're all in a line, and then 5 minutes before we kill our motors, then we have to hold course for 10 minutes. After that 10 minutes, you can do whatever you want. So that's a point where people might hoist spinnakers, tack, jibe, whatnot. But it's pretty cool to have 10 boats in a line or 11 boats in a line in the ocean. This is the offending halyard that snapped. So that is a Dyneema core that had gone under so much friction that it melted together and looked like a rat tail. This, kids, is why exercising your halyards is a good thing to do if you've got a kite up for a long period of time. But yeah, that was not getting spliced back together. This is
at the top shiv there.
It's just going over the top shiv and just the shock loading on it. So this is part of the kite that we pulled out of the water. You'll see what it looked like all laid out later, but we didn't have space on the boat to do so. But just a tiny, tiny bit of a very big, very shredded kite. This is our sail repair person, Dawn. She's around the world, so she was the main sail repair person, but she was having to tape one section at a time, sew across it, again, on the boat, moving boat, and then tape another section again and sew it again. So very tedious work. And again, when the boat's rocking and rolling, a bit difficult.
That a sailrite machine?
That is a little
Yeah.
blue sailrite.
Yeah.
Another gorgeous sunrise or sunset. So wind hole, very bad wind hole. So bad I could get my
That's
reflection. There were, and my mom can attest to this, there were several points when I'd email her from sea because we did have limited email access and just be like, yep, still in a wind hole. Just, it was painful. And here are the boobies. So they are very goofy birds, full of personality. They kept our spirits high a little bit because they're very funny to interact with. They also had no interest in getting off the boat. So someone would try to go to the bow to shoo them off, and they're like, no, we live here now. So we're like, okay, fine. Yeah, they're very fun. These are very interesting looking clouds. They are what a crew member dubbed big white puffy clouds of death. So you'll notice that they're really tall. Oh, hi, Morris. you'll notice they're really tall clouds and then really dark stuff underneath them. So these clouds, when you go under them, you're going to get very wet. These clouds, if you skirt the sides of them, sometimes you'll get some good wind. So very, very interesting to pay attention to clouds at sea. These ones in particular did end up getting quite lively. And there's more boobies. So at one point we counted 7 of these birds all clustered onto our bowsprit. And this was the aforementioned rain shower. So this was one when I was on the mother duty. So at first I was like, oh, I'm not gonna have time to go out there. But then I realized, oh my gosh, yes, I am. So all of us didn't care. We all just like got down to our undies, got our shower soap out, got a really good shower. It was quite the experience. And then this was Costa Rica, land of showers and beers. So very, very good. We were very tightly limited in the time that we could be there. We were instructed we were to only refuel, but both of the skippers decided that that meant bodies and spirits as well. So we got the boat refueled, we got us refueled, then we took off. And the marina had a lovely restaurant with a pool. So I took full liberty of staying in the pool with beverage. And squall. So the big wet puffy clouds of death that I showed earlier, this is what a squall looked like on our radar. So the big red was quite angry. We did get some really cool electrical storms. I didn't get any photos of it from the boat because at that point phones were put away, but we got some really rowdy weather. And then this is Panama. So I blame my American public school education, but I had no idea that Panama City was as huge as it is. And so when we turned the corner and I saw all of these skyscrapers, I was just floored. I thought it was like, you know, typical South American smaller city, but then to see just the opulence in Panama City was incredible. And then that one is out of order. Okay, so the Panama Canal Transit. Oh, you're showing the wrong order. Sorry, guys. Here, okay. I'll just start here. Sorry about that. Okay, so I have some Panama Canal photos. Unfortunately, they're not showing in the right order. But this is in the marina on the other side at Shelter Bay. They had all these little rocks out there. And so I did make one with my sailing unicorn on it. I think they're all loading in the background. I am so sorry.
Just going in non-presentation and move them around.
Let's see. I think what I'll do. Bear with me here. I'll just do this. So, okay, it's not working. So sorry. We'll skip that one. Okay, there we go. So this is one of the bridges. This is the other side of the Panama Canal after clearing the Gatun locks. There was a lot of really beautiful bridges on the Panama Canal. I mean, again, I had no idea everything that went into constructing it, but to see all these bridges, the amazing work that was done to dig that canal was just truly unreal. And then this was a special moment for us. So this is the Qingdao boat. They have had a very tough race restart. They, leaving the Philippines, had to divert to Japan because they had an issue with their backstay pulling up part of their deck. The repairs meant that they ended up missing being able to come to the Seattle stopover. So they had to divert to San Francisco. And then from San Francisco, they sailed to Panama, but they got delayed getting to Panama because they had a crew member that had an injury and had to be removed from the boat. So that meant that they missed seeing us on the Pacific side of Panama. So they finally got to come into the dock at the Shelter Bay side of Panama right as we were getting ready to leave. The entire fleet came out onto the boats, applauded them on their way in. Really special moment. And then we all finally got to be together for Bermuda. All right, so Bermuda to New York City. Bermuda was an incredibly gorgeous area. It is also, dear God, expensive. if you're going to Bermuda, bring lots and lots of cash. The nice thing is the Bermudan dollar and American dollar are a 1-to-1 ratio. It's still very expensive. We finally got some good downtime in Bermuda. We didn't have to do a lot of work on the boat unless you were on the sail repair team, but we did get some good downtime. And then on the leg into New York City, the Seattle boat hit a whale. We got the nickname Free Willy. We do believe that the whale was either dead or mostly dead, as we do keep a watch when you're on deck. We didn't see any signs of a fluke, no spouts, nothing. But we did hit a whale, and it took a bit of our bow off. Sailing past the Statue of Liberty was absolutely incredible. And then Central Park, getting to explore that was really cool as well. So this was sailing into Bermuda. Interesting thing about Bermuda, all of the buildings have the same similar pastel color palette. And then most of the roofs are flat. The reason they do this is so that they can collect rainwater, because they don't have a lot of water making on the island. So any rainwater gets stored when in Rome or when in rum. So that sail, that sail during prep week that I was sitting in the middle of, that was big and beautiful and brand new. This was it wearing its jellyfish costume. This was the first time we were able to actually lay it all the way out and really assess the damage. And we were fixing the sail from Bermuda all the way to New York in fits and spurts. This is more of our jellyfish. This was the official welcome ceremony for the Clipper fleet to Bermuda. These are Bermudan Gombe dancers. I tried to get a video to load here, but they were incredible to see in real life. There were adults and kids dancing, but amazing drums, amazing bright colored costumes, peacock feathers. It was really special to see that. And then these are Gosling's rum barrels, where Gosling's rum is stored. And then this was one of the beaches in Bermuda. Just seeing that crystal clear blue water was something I've never experienced before. I mean, being here, it's cold and murky. This was clear and warm and bathtubby. This was fixing another sail. So the Korea boat also had a really rough time with sail repair. So I became friends with their sail repair guy and spent 3 days in Bermuda working with him on his sails. We also bought matching rainbow shorts because I did Bermuda shorts my way. This is Martin. He is the sail repair guru for Clipper. He works for Hyde Sails, who's the official sail supplier. And the Ballard team made sure that I had a dark and stormy with him. And all good things must come to an end. So we did have to leave Bermuda. This was the parade of sail on the way out there. What was really interesting, you'll see this big black mast in the middle. The Newport to Bermuda race was coming in right as we were leaving. We got to see the first finisher come in the night before. That was Argo, the 70-foot trimaran. And then this was the Imoca 60, whose name I'm blanking on, but it was surreal to see the Newport to Bermuda boats coming in at the same time that we were going. And then the leg to New York. So another sunset, learning the finer points of trimming. We have cleaning the bilges. So one of the jobs you're on every day is bilges. There are a lot of ways that water gets into the boat, and the bilges collect them. So some of the bilges are so deep that they go up to my knee. Sometimes they get full of water. So it can be quite a job to empty those all out. And then this was finally having some wind. This was on the final approach into New York. We have our spinnaker up. And then this was arriving into New York. One of the guys had a really wonderful supporter who packed all kinds of goodie bags for us for arrival into port. In this case, we had a bunch of Lady Liberty hats. And so remember that thing I said about the whale. So on the Clipper boats, they are the bow runs straight at the front, but the very bottom part of the bow is a sacrificial bow. So that's designed so if we hit a shipping container or a whale, that part can crumple just like your front of your car is designed to be a crumple zone. So we got a nice little crack in it. Spoiler alert, this remained for the rest of the race. They did try to fix it. And here we have lovely Martin, one of our maintenance guys. He is using spray foam and then a layer of fiberglass, but they only were able to repair above the water line since we couldn't find a slip that could haul us out in time. So they kind of patched it up, but as one might imagine with Home Depot spray foam and one layer of fiberglass over the water line, it ripped off pretty quickly, but they tried. All right, so here is New York to Derry. So this was finally getting the ocean crossing in. This was the fastest Atlantic crossing in Clipper history. Our boat had what we called 303 mode, which was the day that we finally broke my skipper's previous record of 290 something miles in a day. We did 303 miles. This was with a, what did we do? This was with our Yankee 1 and one, I think it was like one reef in the sail, but we were blasting. Seattle boat has always been a bit of an underdog on this race. We were podium for a lot of the race, but unfortunately not at the very end. We did have our bow that ripped, that part of our bow that ripped off and then was blunted. It created a good bit of drag for us, and then we did lose a spinnaker again. At one point, like I mentioned earlier, we had that 65 knots of wind. And then after that ocean crossing, to finally be able to smell land and realize you're smelling Irish fields, and it did smell like sheep. It was pretty cool. Like it smelled like
Nice.
it smelled like livestock.
Such a cool thing to
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Oh, and another highlight was I got to do the splice of my life. So we had our halyard snap again, but we'd learned from our previous thing. And so we had the kite up on 2 halyards, but that meant that we had to go up and retrieve the other halyard that had snapped still. So I got to resplice it back together. Our people that did the provisioning for this leg of the race, there were a couple things that got left out. Fortunately, we did have a ton of ramen, so that became one of our meals. We ended up dropping down to 5th by the time we got to Derry, which was a bummer because we were really pushing hard to try to get that podium. Unfortunately, it didn't work. And then because we had the fastest Clipper race crossing ever, and because we were only allowed to be in Derry on a specific date, if any of you are familiar with Northern Irish history, there's certain marches that happened in the middle of July that they didn't want us to be there for. So we had to wait until we could get there on July 13th. So they had to add about 150 miles to our course to make sure that we didn't get in until the 13th. Some boats still made it the night before and had to anchor out and wait. All right, so this was leaving New York, again, the Parade of Sail. Going past the Statue of Liberty. This was a screen grab from the position reports showing us in first place at one point. It's like, it happened, I got a picture. Remember that photo of our brand new beautiful mainsail? 2 years in the sail locker and several thousand miles did some work to it. You'll also notice up here, yep. So this was when we sent our first mate up to retrieve what was left of the halyard. What we found out happened was part of the Tylaska shackle had snapped off. So I got to splice a new one on right here. So this is doing the splice of my life because my skipper said, Lizzie, you've got 30 minutes. I did it in 40, but I did it right. So it held.
Yeah.
And then this was, so I finally got the blessed late night sleep. The previous time that I had been on the off watch for cooking duty and was supposed to be able to sleep all night, I got woken up every watch changeover. So this time I made a sign that I hung next to my bed that said, please don't wake mommy. My mother, I'm sure, is laughing at that one. And then this was one of the photos I was able to get that captured a little bit more of, this was that period where we were in the 60+ knot winds. It was just unreal. Like the boat was a heel at an angle, having to launch myself up to, at that point, my top bunk was definitely a bit of an experience. And then this was galley duty during that time. So you'll notice the angle of the stove in comparison to the counter and whatnot, like everything is leaned against. It was a bit of a jungle gym.
What was the sail plan?
So this was when we had that 303 sail plan. So the Yankee 1, and I think at points we still had the full main, but it was we didn't die.
Yeah.
And then
You're off the wind though.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then coming into Ireland, we got greeted with a rainbow, which was pretty special. And this was what my hands looked like after crossing the Atlantic. Pretty soggy, pretty waterlogged, pretty flaky. yeah, they were a hand modeling career was not going to happen. And then in order to flake the mainsail, it's so high up that you have to climb the mast steps. And then what works best is being put in a harness and hauled up a few more feet past that with the Yankee halyard. So yours truly was happy to volunteer to do that. I got a great view of Ireland in doing so. And then this was sailing into Derry. So Derry was an absolutely special city. They really, really loved the Clipper race. Of all of the cities we went to, they were the most hospitable of all of them. They were overwhelmingly friendly. Derry has a history that's not quite as lovely, but they really love having Clipper there. Apparently we've been a huge force in helping the town recover and gain reputation for some good things. And oh my gosh, they put on a party for us. Got to go visit lots of sites, see Giant's Causeway. I got to see the Dark Hedges, which were part of a Game of Thrones episode. Every bar had incredible live music, just really amazing sights. So I got to see castles, Giant's Causeway. If you ever get the chance to go, it's one of the UNESCO wonders of the world. Just absolutely beautiful, beautiful rock sculptures. Some of my teammates. I made it to Bushmills. And then this was part of the Free Dairy Museum going over the troubles from the 70s. Really sobering experience. And then this was the prize giving in Derry. So they put on a whole stage for us. They had concerts. This is the founder, Sir Robin Knox Johnson, up on stage along with our wonderful MC for the night. And then one of the teammates owns a gymnastics gym. She invited us in to have a play day, but we didn't realize it was going to be an actual class. She taught us all somersaults, but at the end, we all got in the foam pit.
Nice. You get launched out of a cannon?
No, but there's a trampoline. And then as part of Clipper being in Derry, they have the Foyle Maritime Festival, which is a big highlight of the summer. On the Friday night, they have a huge lighted ships parade, and Clipper is the centerpiece of it. So all of the Clipper boats get outfitted with lights all the way up the mast, and then they do a parade of sail that's lighted. They have the flares out, and then a fireworks display. This is just one shot from it, but it's better than many 4th of July fireworks displays I've seen, and it's for Clipper and the Foyle Festival. So absolutely incredible. And then this was the day we were leaving. True to Irish form, it poured on us as we were getting ready to leave. This is just after taking a huge group photo of the entire fleet on the docks. And then I swear it wasn't me, but someone the night before put googly eyes on all of the different Clipper boats in strategic places. So this is the Punta del Este boat with googly eyes on it. I still don't know who did it, but a lot of people asked me if I did, so I want to know who. It wasn't
Sounds
me.
like one of your shenanigans.
It doesn't it? But no, it wasn't me. This was the race, part of the race start. So cool thing about leaving Derry was we finally got to do an actual proper race start. We didn't have to do a Le Mans. We got to do a real start with a committee boat and a start gun and whatnot. For some people, this was their first ever real race starts they had done. So there were a couple people that were wondering, wait, what do we do? What? And then shortly after the race start, the wind completely died. There's also current. So these 3 boats are all very close together, trying not to hit each other, but we have Zhuhai, Qingdao, and Bermuda right here. They did eventually have to have the committee boat rib come up and help separate.
They're going backwards.
Yeah, and like into each other. Can't mess up the graphics. This was our foredeck union. We had a pretty lively race start because of the shifting wind. So me and these 2 on the foredeck got to put kite up, and then we had to quickly do some things with the Yankee as well. And then on the way into London. So some highlights of it, we got to sail up and over Scotland. Scotland is absolutely beautiful. I really want to go back and see it. Because it was the summer and we were so north, we had a lot of natural light. Like we only had darkness for a few hours some nights. And then I'd never seen oil rigs before. So that was cool. A low light, I am cursed. If you ever come sailing with me, I am sorry, you will not see an orca whale if I'm awake. During my off watch, as we were going through an area called Pentland Firth, which is notorious for really crazy tides and currents, apparently there was a humongous pot of orca. No one woke me up. So again, I have not seen orca from a boat. And then here's some photos from that. So this is one Clipper boat way off in the distance. Sunset. You can tell one of my favorite things on the boat. Helming. Oh yeah, our rudder. So our boat was falling apart a little bit. They realized, yeah, they realized shortly after we were leaving Derry that our rudder was missing a part of it. The Foyle River that Derry is on has a lot of, it's a very tidal area, so you get a lot of flotsam and jetsam coming in and out. So we're thinking either this is residual from the whale strike, or we had a log hit us and snap our rudder off. But one of the maintenance guys came with us for about an hour right after race start, just to make sure things were okay. This was,
Does have twin rudders?
yeah, they have twin rudders. This was right after a head sail change in the middle of the night. It was exhausting. And then we have, this was, I think, the last sunset of Clipper. And then this is getting ready to go up the Thames at the end of the race. So this is us in the Thames, but this is when it starts getting really emotional and overwhelming. This was the final lock to go into Royal Albert Docks. And you could just feel this sense, especially for those people that had been on the boat for a long time, that it was really finally coming to an end. And it was surreal. So this is the photo you all saw from the event. This is one that's really special to me because my mother is, without question, my biggest Clipper supporter. And to see her there at the dock at the end after, this is the longest I'd ever been away from my mom, was just 3 months. To finally see her there was really just absolutely unreal. And one of the Clipper photographers had snuck onto our bow and got this photo. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm leaning over the boat to the rail to go see my mom because we weren't technically allowed off the boat yet, but what were they going to do? Kick me off the race at that point? And then all the boats came up onto the stage in descending order. So because we were 10th, we were pretty close to the front of the line to get sprayed with champagne. And you'll notice a lot of the girls are flinching away, and then there's me. So people keep asking me what I'm going to do next. Kind of figuring it out. It was nice to come home, rest for a little bit before going back to work. But as far as what's coming next, spoiler alert, I'm not done sailing. I'm going to be doing a lot of racing this fall and then cruising our little boat when we can as well. That's the Catalina 27 with my mama bear. Working at Ballard Sails. Again, it's an awesome place. If you need any work on your boat or your sails, come on in. And then later this year, next year, my plan is to become Captain Brim and get my captain's license. Then other than that, who knows? So I know I yacked at you all a whole lot, but if you have any questions, please fire away.
Really a brave woman.
Thank you. Go ahead.
How did they decide who's the captain and the mate?
Yeah, great question. So the captains and first mates, Clipper calls them additional qualified person. That's a mouthful, so I just say first mate. They're hired by Clipper. So they have a big interview process for the skippers, a slightly bigger interview process, slightly smaller interview process for the first mates. But as part of the interview process for the skippers, they have them do trainings, like they have them lead some of the trainings, like levels 1 through 4. I don't know the minimum qualifications to be a skipper, but they do want a lot of sailing experience and racing experience. But it's, and then to be a first mate, you don't have to be as experienced, but you do still need to be able to take over the boat in an emergency. So for the first mates, I know at a minimum, I think you have to have your Yachtmaster Ocean. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, they're hired on by Clipper, and then the idea is they're the skipper for the entire race. Sometimes things happen and they have to swap out skippers, but the goal is the skipper is there for the whole time.
You feel comfortable and safe with all the skippers always.
Yeah. Yeah. Other questions?
Are they coming to Seattle this April again?
I hope so. It wouldn't be this April. The next edition of the race is, let's see, this is the 1920 race just ended. So it'll be starting next fall or next August or September out of London. So it would be in 24 that they'd be here. I don't know if Seattle's going to be a stop or not. I was trying to kind of fish for that out of the race office on the last race, but I hope so. I really hope so, because it's really fun. I will be posting about it as soon as I find out.
You request to be on the boat with a friend?
You can, yeah. You can request it. They won't always guarantee it because they do try to load balance the boats. So after every training week, your skipper submits notes to head office. So they try to balance things out with, okay, who's experienced, who's not experienced, who are the ones that get seasick. butt heads, they try to put only a couple of them on each boat. They share the love there too, but they do take some things into consideration. So like if there's a friend that you really want to do the race with, they will look at that. We did have a father-son duo on our boat for leg 8, and there was a mother-daughter duo that did leg, did they do 7 and 8? No, the mother-daughter duo did leg 8. So it can happen, especially if you postured a clipper that you might not sign up if you don't get to do that. They do like getting paid. So it's possible. Any
Lizzie,
others?
can you hear me?
Hi,
Hey,
Hi, Dakota.
hey, how many of the crew on your boat were on the full circumnavigation? Any?
Yeah, we had 4. So we had 2 women and 2 guys. The 2 guys, one of them is from Seattle and one of them is from England.
So 4 out of 20 were on these boats for like, what's the whole
The whole thing, yeah. So the whole thing is 11 months, about 40,000 miles, plus a 2-year gap in the middle for the pandemic. So we did have some people that didn't come back to the race after the pandemic because life happened. You also have, I think it's about 30% attrition for round the worlders. So there will be some that sign up to the round the world. Some of them bounce after the first leg. Some of them, get injured, whatnot. But we have 4 people on our boat that did make it all the way around the world. Any others from the computer?
Yeah, just speak up because we can't see the chat right now.
They have a selection process, and so do you have someone who signed up but end up not selected because there are too many applicants?
So if you're qualified and you prove competency during the training, you're going to get in. You're going to be on a boat. We do have, there was one person in particular that was on my leg 2 that he was level 2. He was repeating the training. To put it quite bluntly, he didn't have the faculties to be a sailor. He was a disaster on the boat. His name did not get announced at the training or at the crew allocation, but given that you're already part of Renton Sailing, I think that already puts you head and shoulders above about anyone else.
It's still quite amazing for the amateurs to get 4 weeks of training, right? Level 1 to level 4 weeks of training to go across ocean.
Yeah, and during the middle of the pandemic, when it was looking like this race might not happen, I was going to be annoyed at having to say goodbye to the berth fee because it was not cheap, but the training in itself was absolutely incredible. I mean, to have the survival at sea training, to have that experience getting ready to ocean race, like that is still something that you can take with you. And then as part of the Clipper training, you do get RYA certifications. So I got a competent crew, there's a sea survival, and there's a 3rd one that I got as part of Clippers. And I've got that in my logbook as well as competencies. Yeah. They used to do a as well, but they shuttered that. So now all the training is in Gosport.
So
Yeah,
Lizzie, mommy dearest here. What was this, otherwise known as Ellie, what was the scariest situation that you encountered and how did you deal with it? How did you get through it?
Oh man, scariest. I'm not going to tell you the story of the bar and dairy, so no, just kidding.
Let me clarify. While on the boat.
When we were in those 60 knot winds, it was pretty dicey. And there was a point that we had gone forward to do a head sail change, and it was pretty rowdy. There was a guy at the helm that was really, guys, I'm being mean to you, but in this case, it was a guy that was at the helm, but he was just all over the place, very squirrely. The sea state was really unstable, and we were supposed to be unhanking a Yankee and hanking a new one on. And at that point, I was like, we could broach. And in fact, there was another point that now that I'm thinking of, it was even scarier. On leg 7, we rounded up. We didn't do a full broach. We rounded up, and one of the guys that I did foredeck with, he was right by the shroud. All of a sudden he was on the low side, and a lot of water ended up rushing over him, and I heard a gurgling sound I hope I never hear again. And we actually had to watch him for the couple of days for water inhalation. But I don't know how I did this, but I was able to grab him by the shirt collar, and this was like the tall Dutch kid that's like a foot and a half taller than me.
God.
By the shirt collar and get him closer to the mast. But I think that one was the scariest one now that I think about it, just because the gravity of it. But he's fine. He was a little bit shaken and whatnot. Yeah.
Have to admit, I've heard a lot of Lizzie's stories, not that one.
Yeah. Love you, Mom. Go ahead.
The winner, did they get a big trophy? Did they get money?
Yeah, so speaking of the money part, I forgot to mention, Clipper has a charity that they fundraise for. It's UNICEF, and so the boats all fundraise for that. As far as the overall winner, their boat name does get put on the trophy, the Clipper Cup, that's handed down, or not handed down, it stays at the head office. But there's no prize money awarded or anything like that. It's glory. I mean, they do get a hearty amount of champagne from the sponsor, but yeah, it's not like some of the other big America's Cup races or whatnot where there's prize money. Or is there prize money for America's Cup? Anyway, yeah, no prize money for Clipper. But they all, I will guarantee you that there were some bars that did pretty well that night. Any others?
So the process is you sign up for the legs you would like to do. Then they fly you to London.
Oh no, I fly me to London.
Yeah. You fly to London and take 4 weeks training. And then if they select you, you will have to go in the place where the legs start and do your legs.
A little bit, kind of. You do apply, they have you do an interview. In my case, it was a little bit different because I befriended the recruitment director 2 years before. So by the time I actually applied and paid my deposit, he was like, finally. But if you're just random person that hasn't met office, then yeah, you do an interview, or you apply, you do an interview, and then if you pass your interview, then you sign up for the training. Clipper does have a policy where if you decide after the first week of training that you want to pull out, you can. After that point, if you choose to leave, the contract is pretty strict as far as getting refunds and whatnot. But then, yeah, you sign up for the legs that you want to do. It's based on availability. Some legs fill up pretty quickly, like leg 8 is known as the Champagne and Glory leg. So that one tends to fill up pretty quickly. But otherwise, you can either sign up for whatever legs you want or around the world. Some people will do a couple of legs like I did. Some people will do half around the world. Some people will do like one towards the beginning, one towards the end. It just depends on time and money.
What's the total cost?
So I don't know what the current cost is. When I signed up for my 2 legs and my training, it was 19,500 British pounds, which came to, this is when I'm gonna start crying in millennial. This is, so that came to about 25,000 US, and then it was paying for flights. The berth or your Clipper fee does include your big Musto offshore foulies, but like my boots I bought, base layers, gloves, all other kit and caboodle for the race. And then yeah, flights and hotels, food and port. I purposely haven't done all of the math because I don't want to
No.
cry. Have a down payment on the house. But yeah, it is part of the adventure. I can't take it with me. And with that being said, like there was a lot of creative fundraising I did. I am very blessed to have an amazing community. Like people threw in bits and pieces to like help me pay for the race. But I will consider it an investment. Like it's definitely an investment, but it was fun.
And that was 90 days, right?
About, yeah. We weren't at sea the entire time because we did have, of course, the stopovers. Gary was like a week and a half. New York was 5 days. Bermuda was about a week, but you're at sea for most of it.
That kite that you were repairing in the car park, and did that ever come back together?
It did, yeah. So the
Yes.
kite that we were working on repairing, so we got it mostly completely taped in Bermuda, and then it ended up going to a loft in New York because we'd also done some damage to the head where the ring had almost completely chafed through the webbing. That we couldn't do on our little sailrite, so that had to go to a loft. So the loft did all the stitching on top of all the tape for us, and then they fixed the head webbing. And that kite did fly, and it flew for several days in the North Atlantic. It did unfortunately rip again, and at that point we just didn't bother fixing it we did fix it in Derry, but then we didn't fly it again because one of the rules with Clipper is you have to finish with a complete set of sails. So we were like, all right, this one's on life support. We're just going to leave it in the bag.
How long has the Clipper race been going on?
So it's been going on since, I believe, 1996. They've had a few different iterations of the fleet. The fleet is on the 3rd version. They started on 60-foot boats, then they went to 68-foot boats, and then this current version, the Clipper 70s, they've done 3 round the worlds. And they'll do one more lap with the 70s, and then there's a new fleet that's being built actually in, I think they're doing it in China again, in a boatyard there.
Feel safe? Oh, like in general, do you feel pretty safe?
Yeah, I mean, you generally still want to have your wits about you while you're on the boat, but the skippers are very safety oriented. Mine in particular was a really big stickler about making sure that you were clipped on during the appropriate conditions. We didn't have to clip on during the day if it was lighter wind, but if it was anything over 15 hours of darkness or skipper said so, you were clipped on. And we did drill a lot on safety. So yeah, clipper, because again, it's amateurs, it's not necessarily people that are experienced ocean racers. Some of their safety stuff is maybe even more extreme than one is used to when racing around here, but it's, yeah, they're big on the safety.
Plus, I saw you have net all over around the safety lines
Mhm.
to prevent people from falling.
Yeah, prevent people in sails from falling. So yeah, very good point. We have the netting all over the, they call it guard wires. We call it lifelines here in the States. But we have netting all around. So you're not going to see people hiking out with legs over on the boats like you might on like a TB52 around here.
All right. Hey, thanks so much. Yeah. Stay up here, Cynthia. We're not quite done yet.
Oh,
We have one of our lapel pins for you
Oh,
with our bird
thank
sheet on it,
you.
and then of course one of our bird sheet, and hopefully maybe that can get hung up
Oh.
in the sail off. Fun
cool.
story about that particular bird sheet. We're sort of running low on bird sheets. We need to get some more, but that particular bird sheet has been from the Americas to French Polynesia.
Oh,
So,
cool.
yeah. So
Awesome.
thank you very much. That was so awesome to learn. Hey, a couple more things as we wrap up here. Our next meeting is going to be right here, October 26th, sort of similar format. Puget Soundkeeper Alliance is going to be speaking at that meeting. They do a whole lot of work locally for water quality, and then we're partnering with them to be part of the International Coastal Cleanup. So all that data gets compiled. They have a part of that there too. So that's pretty exciting. There's not going to be a meeting in November, by the way. It's Thanksgiving week, and this facility wasn't available, and we figured we all want a holiday from Sailing Center meetings. Anyway, our December meeting is going to happen to be on the third Wednesday, the 21st. It doesn't conflict with Christmas that's going to be here, and so that'll just be a change in our fourth Wednesday thing there. So anyway, please hang out for a little bit, finish some of the snacks, meet some new friends and everything. And if everyone would help put away the chairs, that'd be great.
Thank you, Lizzy.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone in Zoom land.
We share the presentation.
What's your favorite? Yes.
That was marvelous. Oh my God, that's so helpful. So are you thinking you're going to clipper? I would love to